Today I wanted to share some DIY spring decor ideas that I added to our living room when I gave it a spring refresh. The first thing I want to talk about was a recent thrift store visit that I went on. I was looking for a new white vase or like a creamy vase that I would be able to use to display flowers in the living room this year. But what I actually found was a jar with a broken lid that had apples on one side. And at first, I wasn't super thrilled about the apples, and I thought maybe I'll just leave it. It's a good shape and a good color, but with those apples, I'm not really sure if it's worth it. But because it was only $1.25, I decided that I could easily hide the apples just by facing the apples against the wall. And now that I have it at home and I washed it and I have flowers inside of it, I absolutely love this vase. It's one of my favorite vases that I have now. The DIY projects that I did were so inexpensive, and I was able to get both of them done in less than an hour apiece. Not to mention, they were really fun projects to do. A few years ago, my husband and I made a simple fabric DIY. The whole inspiration was like tapestry as artwork on the wall. But it's so big, I've been struggling to find a place to display that in our new house. But I still wanted that texture on the wall. So I found an image on the internet, printed it onto some transfer paper, and then I ironed that image onto some fabric and then framed it to help give our artwork a little bit more texture and a little bit more coziness for the spring. At first, I was a little nervous that this DIY was not going to turn out very good because I was afraid that the transfer paper was going to be really glossy and a little like reflective once I put it on the fabric. But after I finished the project, I realized that it actually turned out really well, and you can't see a whole lot of gloss from the transfer paper. So I'm actually really happy with the way this DIY turned out. I feel like this piece of wall decor adds a whole lot of cottage charm, and it fits the simple style that I like so much. The second spring DIY project that I did for our living room refresh this year was to take some of that fabric and put it on cardboard that I had cut to fit within the frame that I had my pressed leaves in from the fall, and then pin some butterflies inside of the frame. This was a DIY project that came to mind because we are going to do a little mini curriculum on butterflies this spring with the girls. And I thought it would be fun for us to have some of these butterflies on the wall that we could talk about as we're learning about the butterfly and its life cycle. This is the only room in the house that I used these peonies in. And it's kind of like a rule that I broke, I suppose. But I was just so excited to start decorating with flowers. And these are my favorite faux flowers. And so I just decided to say, forget the rules of using only flowers that bloom in early spring to decorate the house with. And I pulled out the flowers that make me happy and that I like so much. And I think that they look really, really good in this vase that I got. I still cannot believe that this vase was only $1.25. I think to date, this is probably the best thrift store buy that I have ever purchased. We moved in 2 Christmases ago, so when it was winter, I wanted to have some nice velvet curtains up on the wall just to help make it feel more cozy and give the space a little bit more color. I left those curtains up all year last year, and there was certainly nothing wrong with them. But this year, I just wanted something a little lighter for the living room. These are curtains that I had from when we lived at our old house, and I grabbed them and hung them up and took the green velvet curtains down. And honestly, this is the biggest change in our living room. It seems so small, but it actually has a huge impact. When my husband came home from work that evening after I had done everything with the curtains, he was talking about how it felt so different in the living room and he liked it. It felt more like spring, but he couldn't figure out what it was that was so different. And then the next day, he came home and was sitting down in the living room again and was just kind of looking around, trying to figure it out. Like he knew something had changed, but couldn't figure out what it was. And then he realized that the biggest change was those curtains. These curtains are lighter, they're more airy, and they make it feel more like spring. Like I did in the kitchen and dining room, I also added tulips to our living room. I wanted to say thank you to those of you who left me comments on my last video about these white tulips. I thought that it was my fault that these white tulips were now turning yellow, but it was so nice to hear from you guys that I am not the only person that you watch on YouTube who is experiencing this dilemma with the white tulips. In fact, one of you shared that one of the girls you guys follow, Kristen Hoffman, did a DIY to give them new life again. And what she did was watered down some white paint and then dipped her tulips in them. So this is a video that I'm going to go try and look up so that I can do with my tulips now that I know that even if I go buy new ones again on Amazon, this is just gonna happen again. Another thing that I did for the living room was to just reduce the amount of things that are on each of the tables. On the radio, we had a bowl and a book, and so I just put a vase and a candlestick on the radio. Smaller, they take up less visual space, and it just felt a little less. The coffee table has 2 books, a candle, and a vase of tulips, and that's it. By reducing the amount of stuff, it also makes it feel lighter and more airy, like it feels for spring. Another thing I did was change out some of the blankets that I use for winter, and I put those away and pulled out some that I use for spring. So one of my favorite blankets is this blue one. I got it the year I got married. I still have it, and I love the color. The color is so pretty. It's the perfect color for spring. And then the other blanket that I used is a blanket that I got at a vintage store a few years ago. And I just draped it over the back of our couch in the living room. These dark brown couches, I've realized, are starting to come back into style. But even though they're coming back into style, I am not in love with them. I've had them since we got married. They were the first couch set that we bought from Menards. They've held up really, really well, being that they were very, very cheap. But I'm just so done with the dark couches. I have no plans of replacing them, so one of the ways that I make it feel lighter and brighter is to pull out this big blanket and drape it over the back, just because it kind of breaks up the dark blob of the couch in our living room. And then the last thing I did was swap one of the pieces of artwork that I had in our living room. I didn't want to go buy new frames for the DIY spring decor artwork that I made. I just used frames that I had upstairs in the loft space. And this was one of the only frames that I had that wasn't too big for the bird artwork. So when I got the bird artwork all done, I put it up against the wall with that really kind of detailed brass frame that I had behind the rocking chair, and they just seemed so different. I just didn't like it. So we are working on installing the range vent cover in the kitchen. So the picture that I had hanging up there, we had to take down. And so I took that picture and hung it up where the other picture was. And then I put the bird artwork up above it. And I like the way that looks much better. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that this video gave you some ideas for some simple and inexpensive DIY projects that you can do to add some spring to your living room. If you're new to my channel, I would love for you to hit the subscribe button down below, and I'll see you next time.